What would you do if your neighbor grabbed your child's stroller and laughed while calling you names? Just because you're a black mother. That's exactly what happened when Sarah tried to walk home from the market. Her elderly neighbor hurled insults, yanked the stroller, and left her baby screaming. When she panicked and sprayed pepper spray into the air, he flipped the script, pretending to be the victim and calling the police his own son. They smirked, not knowing her husband was on his way home to end things differently. Before we dive in, let us know where you're watching from. We'd love to hear your thoughts. The cold October night was shattered by a voice filled with hate. "Look what we have here," sneered Frank Thompson, stepping off his porch like a hunter spotting prey. Some woman without a man wandering the streets at night with a kid. Sarah Benson froze on Oak Avenue, just steps from her front door. Her 2-year-old daughter Maya slept peacefully in the stroller, unaware of the danger approaching them in the darkness. For a week, Frank had been watching, waiting. Sarah had moved to this quiet street in Denver, while her husband Marcus finished his engineering job in Phoenix. She thought she'd found a safe place to start fresh. Instead, she'd landed in the territory of a man who saw her very existence as a threat. At 62, Frank had perfected the art of intimidation. He'd been the unofficial gatekeeper of Oak Avenue for 23 years, deciding who belonged and who didn't. Sarah's brown skin and obvious independence had marked her as a target from the moment she'd started unloading boxes. "Keep walking," Sarah's mind screamed. But her legs wouldn't move. Frank blocked her path, his cruel words cutting through the night air. "Women like you should stay indoors after dark. But I guess that's too much to expect from your kind." The racist slur hit Sarah like a physical blow. Her hands shook with rage and fear. This wasn't just rudeness. This was calculated cruelty designed to break her spirit. "How dare you speak to me that way?" she whispered, her voice trembling. Frank's yellow teeth showed in an evil grin. "Face it, sweetheart. Women like you can't hold on to a decent man. That's why you're here alone with some mixed-up kid in the middle of the night." The words were chosen like weapons, aimed at every insecurity a single mother might have. But Frank had miscalculated. Sarah wasn't single, just temporarily alone. Before Sarah could respond, Frank grabbed her stroller handle. Maya jerked awake, screaming as terror filled her innocent eyes. The sight of her frightened daughter awakened something fierce in Sarah's chest. "Let go of my stroller," Sarah shouted, pulling back with desperate strength. "Don't touch my daughter." But Frank held tight, his beer-soaked breath inches from her face. "Maybe this will teach you some respect." In that moment, Sarah realized this wasn't random cruelty. This was a lesson Frank had been planning all week, waiting for the perfect opportunity to put her in what he considered her place. Sarah's hand found the pepper spray in her purse. With shaking fingers, she aimed it at the ground between them and sprayed a warning burst. "Back away from us now," she commanded. Frank immediately let go and stumbled backward, his hands flying to his face in fake agony. "She attacked me," he bellowed loud enough for the whole street to hear. "This crazy woman just assaulted me." "I didn't spray you," Sarah protested. "I sprayed the ground as a warning." But Frank was already calling 911, his voice full of fake panic. "Police! I need officers at 312 Oak Avenue. A woman just attacked me with pepper spray. She's got a kid, and she's acting dangerous." Within minutes, red and blue lights lit up Oak Avenue like a nightmare. Officer Rick Thompson stepped out of the patrol car, Frank's own son. Sarah's heart sank as she realized the game was rigged from the start. Rick walked straight to his father without even looking at Sarah, as if she were invisible. "What happened here, Dad?" Rick asked, his hand resting on his belt. "I was checking my mailbox when this woman walked by," Frank lied smoothly. I said good evening like any decent neighbor would. She started screaming at me, then pulled out that weapon and sprayed it right in my face. That's a complete lie. Sarah stepped forward, Maya still crying in her arms. He grabbed my stroller and said horrible things about my daughter and me. I only sprayed the ground to make him back off. Rick barely glanced at her. Ma'am, put that weapon down and step away from the child. This is my daughter. Sarah's voice cracked with disbelief. Rick turned back to Frank with obvious concern. Dad, do you need medical attention? Want to press charges? Frank's performance continued. My eyes are burning, son. And yes, I want to press charges. A man shouldn't be attacked in his own neighborhood. Rick nodded coldly and faced Sarah. Ma'am, you're under arrest for assault. Turn around and put your hands behind your back. We'll need to call child services for the minor. Sarah's world collapsed. You cannot be serious. Your father is lying. Ma'am, stop resisting, Rick said, reaching for his handcuffs. Any further trouble will mean more charges. 3 hours later, in the harsh lights of the police station, Sarah sat with Maya in her lap, both exhausted from crying. Rick slid papers across the metal table. Just sign these, he said coldly. This way you go home tonight instead of jail. Sarah stared at the formal apology letter, an admission of guilt she didn't deserve. Through the mirror, she could see a social worker ready to take Maya if she refused. Her hands trembled as she signed the lie, knowing she had no choice. The harassment escalated from there. The next morning, Sarah found garbage dumped across her front lawn like a sick welcome mat. A threatening note was tucked under her door. Get out of our neighborhood. You don't belong here. Frank had declared war, and he was just getting started. Every day brought new torment. He would appear wherever Sarah tried to find peace with Maya, at the small playground, outside the grocery store, even watching from his window as they walked to the mailbox. His presence was like a dark cloud, poisoning every moment of their new life. The breaking point came at the playground. Sarah was pushing Maya on the swings, finally seeing her daughter smile after days of fear. That's when Frank appeared, positioning himself directly in front of the swings. He leaned down close to Maya's innocent face. You know what, little girl? He whispered, his voice soft but filled with venom. When you grow up, you're going to be just like your mama. Nothing but trouble. Maya didn't understand the words, but she felt the hatred. Her bright smile vanished as she reached for her mother with frightened eyes. Don't you ever speak to my daughter again, Sarah hissed, scooping Maya from the swing so quickly the chains rattled. But Frank just smiled that predatory smile. Public playground, sweetheart. I have just as much right to be here as you do. Maybe more, since I actually belong in this neighborhood. Each attempt to report Frank's harassment was met with the same response from Rick. No proof, he'd say with mock concern. Could be anyone. Maybe you're seeing threats that don't exist. My advice? Mind your own business and try to be a better neighbor. Sarah felt trapped in a nightmare with no escape. Frank had turned her own home into a prison, and his son made sure the law would never protect her. Then Marcus came home early. When Sarah heard the car door slam in their driveway 3 days ahead of schedule, relief flooded through her. Marcus stood in their doorway, looking like he'd driven straight through the night, which he had. His usually neat appearance was disheveled, his brown eyes carrying a haunted look that matched her own. Tell me everything, Marcus said, pulling her into his arms. Every single detail from the beginning. So Sarah told him everything. The confrontation, the arrest, the garbage, the threats, Rick's refusal to help. With each detail, she watched her husband's jaw tighten, watched something dangerous crystallize behind his eyes. But instead of exploding with anger, Marcus went completely quiet. That silence scared Sarah more than shouting would have, because she knew when her husband's engineering mind shifted into problem-solving mode. "There's something I need to show you," Marcus said, leading her to their bedroom window. He pointed to what looked like a small bird feeder hanging from their gutters. "That's not actually a bird feeder." Sarah stared at the innocent-looking device. "What is it?" "Security camera," Marcus said quietly. "Motion-activated, night vision, records to a cloud server. I installed it before you moved in." He turned to face her, guilt and determination mixing in his expression. "I was worried about you being here alone. I wanted to make sure the neighborhood was safe." "You've been watching our house this whole time?" "The camera only activates with motion," Marcus corrected. "But after your calls got more worried, I started monitoring closely." His voice took on that cold edge again. "I saw what happened the night Frank grabbed your stroller. I saw everything." That night, Marcus spent hours in their home office, surrounded by printed screenshots, video files, and evidence logs. He was building a comprehensive case, documenting every moment of Frank's harassment with timestamps that made denial impossible. At the packed community meeting 3 days later, Marcus stood before their neighbors with quiet authority. The projector screen showed crystal-clear footage of Frank's campaign of terror. Every racist word, every threatening gesture, every lie told to police. The room watched in horrified silence as Frank's true nature was exposed. They saw him dump garbage at 2 a.m. like a criminal. They watched him terrorize a toddler at the playground. Most damning of all, they witnessed his performance the night he called police, claiming assault when the video clearly showed Sarah spraying the ground in self-defense. "Jesus Christ," someone whispered. "That's not neighborly concern. That's pure hatred." By the video's end, the community center was dead silent except for Maya playing quietly, oblivious to being the target of an adult man's rage. The truth was finally out, documented, and undeniable. Frank pleaded guilty to harassment, stalking, and child endangerment. Rick lost his badge for corruption and bias. The FBI opened a civil rights investigation that would follow both men for years. Justice had been served, but the scars remained. Maya still flinched at loud noises. Some neighbors still looked away in shame, unable to face their role in letting the harassment continue. Yet slowly, healing began. The community came together to plant a garden in Sarah's front yard, a living symbol that love could grow even where hatred had poisoned the soil. Standing in that garden weeks later, watching Maya laugh with new friends among the colorful flowers, Sarah felt something she hadn't experienced since moving to Oak Avenue: hope. The legal victory had given them justice, but this garden gave them something more powerful: proof that standing up to hate, no matter how scary, was always worth the fight. Sometimes the strongest weapon against darkness is simply refusing to let it win. And sometimes, when good people finally see the truth, they choose to plant flowers where hatred once grew.